Gonna rock it now, gonna rock it now, by Jack Sandarelli, Jack Sandarelli, gonna rock it now, gonna rock it now, rock it, Jack Sandarelli, T-Force.
Welcome to the rework of the T-Force, now we going hard, cause we bumping at the beat source. It's a 3-course dinner of dudes bringing the news and stats, interviews and casts from the pro scene. So fresh and so clean, like you're leaning with Nami in the bot lane. Keep it hot like brand, practicing his dot game, give it to you easy like you're Resi in a bot game. Imagine Draven at prime time, now ulti like LeBlanc can copy that 4 times, but manlier, knock it up like now fight planning a family-er. You gotta be tuned in like Sona on the ad wall, get on the chat call, can a podcast really be all that? Of course, how do 4 guys make a Triforce?
Hey guys, welcome to the Trinity Force podcast. My name is Adam Ponophobia Cogswell, and I am your host, as always, joined by a great group of guys and 1 girl. I think I need to figure out a better way to say that. I've said 192 episodes.
Boys and girls.
People.
Hey guys, like, you know.
Well, here's the problem for...
Or wait. Or a great group.
No, I have to... okay, here, I'm going to have to
and a commendable cast of co-hosts.
Yeah, a commendable cast of co-hosts.
That's the one. That's the one.
Yes, I don't like the whole adding the add 1 girl, but I've said, and I'm joined by a great group of guys for like 150 episodes or something stupid, so it's really hard to reprogram yourself.
1 lovely lady and a bunch of jerks.
Well, that's probably true.
That's probably the most accurate one.
Yeah.
As I said, you guys are listening to episode 193 of the Trinity Force podcast. I may have put 192 in the title, but it is 193. We're going to jump into some quick news for this podcast. As always, we are sponsored by NatureBox, so please go check them out, tinyurl.com/tforcenature. You guys can go pick up your own Nature Box, delivered to your door monthly, full of healthy snacks. You can pick up 5 snacks. Sean has already eaten his for this month, and he got it on the 1st.
I always eat all my snacks. No snack left behind.
Need to get some snacks to have at the office because I've been snacky lately, and I don't have anything healthy. It's all like candy and stuff out of vending machines that I could get.
That's awful. No hot fries, none of that. Get you some
I need some.
Get you some sriracha cashews if you want something hot to snack on.
They're
healthy and delicious. That's T-Force Nature. Again, tinyurl.com/T-Force Nature. Go check out all the other podcasts, trinityforcepodcast.com. And speaking of the other podcasts, I do have a call out for the community. We are in need of a new producer for the LCS Rundown. A producer that we have there is now transitioning into more of a business admin role. And as you can see, we've brought people on in the past. The podcast quality has stayed the same over the past number of 30 episodes. So thank you, Lancifer, for putting that together for us. You've been doing a fantastic job, even when you do lose the audio.
You didn't have to upload twice.
It was there.
Yeah. But yeah, if you are an audio technician and you want to have something on your resume, the Trinity Force Network is we're a certified business, so we can definitely help you out. Help you out there. We'll give you a great review. We'll help you out, and you can come in. You can put the podcast together once a week for the T-Force LCS Rundown, and there are more opportunities in the future. If you continue to work with the Trinity Force Network and help us out. So if you would like, and you have some, proof of concept, like you've put podcasts together for, you've worked with audio, whatever it may be, and you want to spend a couple hours a week doing this for us, go ahead and email feedback@trinityforcepodcast.com. Like I said, if anything, think of it like an internship where you can put us on your resume, and you can, to give you like an example, when Sotir applied for Riot, I actually sat on the phone with Riot for 30 minutes and got like a mini interview about Sotir, and I'm one of the reasons the guy got his job. Yeah,
they gonna ask.
Nice.
So that is there, guys. We need a producer. Please write it in if you want to help out. Other than that, that is the news for this week. Everybody, you all look great tonight, and I think we're going to take this right into patch 4.16 discussion. I keep saying 4.15. So as you guys know, today, Ascension, the Shurima patch hit, where it's like a mini update with like, I don't know, what is it, like 15 changes in the entire patch, and plus Cassiopeia got released. So we're going to start right at this top as I pull it up with Cassiopeia. You guys talked about her a few weeks ago and how she is going to be played. I'm assuming at least one of you got to play her in that time that she's been released today, right? Or at least play around with her in a...
No, I've had zero time.
I have not.
Wow, we are a great podcast. Well,
this is typical of us.
Well, because none of you have gotten to play her, one of our listeners actually took the time to sit down and crunch all her numbers. He got to play her a number of times. He has like 1,500 Cassiopeia games already on him.
Wow.
And so he looked at the kit changes and what happens, and the TLDR of Cassiopeia is she's really, really weak early now, like more weak than she was before. And her mid game is very much reliant on what items she has. But if she makes it to the end game and has items, including a death cap, she's pumping out more DPS than she was previously.
Okay.
And
Because of her passive, right?
Because of her
Because
passive.
the way it stacks up and just makes her do awesome. But you can, apparently there's a lot of counterplay because when she's not in any lane doing anything, she's not stacking her passive. So if you kill her a lot, gank her a lot, she's dead a lot, she's running away a lot, she's zoned, she's not stacking it. So why is she, numbers-wise, it looks like she should have better sustain in the lane.
It's more or less because they took the early damage off like her Q and her W and her E and all that.
So she's
and
weaker
at
at killing you.
Yeah, they
lane.
dumped a ton out of it. They took a ton off it and backloaded it, really. And plus she has all that scaling AP with her kit, with her passive, that having like a death cap just it increases her power too.
Yeah, she's got to sacrifice it somewhere.
But
So the big thing I keep reading is that her damage overall is affected by the adjustments to Twin Fang, because it used to be a case where if you got closer to your enemies, you actually could get off more casts of the ability, and now that's no longer the case.
So now the difference now with Twin Fang, the new one, is it resets on cast rather than on hit, and that's what Dom was saying.
Yeah, so the range, it used to be a case where if you were closer to your enemies, you could get more casts of it because you were hitting more frequently just due to less missile travel time. And now that's no longer a case and everything. So it ended up being a case where earlier in the game, you end up getting more frequent casts of the ability, but later game, you have less potential room for casts. If that makes sense. Like in theory, on old casts, you could have gotten more casts of the ability than you can now. I think that really only ends up hurting like the expert main level players of the champion, and the rest of us who don't really play her all that often will overall be helped by it. So it makes the champion in that respect more accessible to everybody else, but it's kind of bad because it punishes the cast mains in the process.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head with her. It's you also could, if you look at, like we were talking earlier with the AP ratios, that for example the W had a 0.15 AP ratio per second, and now the new one has a 0.1, and but the slow has been increased, so you can dump. It's like a 1 wonder. You can get that extra slow and start pounding your Twin Fangs into somebody. But she really does. I think you guys mentioned her when I wasn't here. She reminds me of a Rise now. She needs a Rod of Ages. She needs a death cap. And after she gets those two items, she just starts pumping damage.
You think she needs a death cap? I feel like
she needs a death cap now. She no longer has a very malleable build path based on the way her AP ratios work, and since she's gaining more AP, death cap gives her more AP because you gain 30% with the passive. So you don't bring as much utility as say a Rise does with the slow and the AoE damage. Your utility isn't a one and done with your ultimate.
I wonder how noticeable her 50 stack heal is for keeping her in lane. A little bit of spell vamp there, or heal. She's got 50 stacks on her passive, 5% of ability power, and Twin Fang restores 6, 8, 10, 12, 16 plus 0.1 ability power in health. So, or 75 stacks, I'm sorry.
I couldn't say.
So I'm curious about that one because that's interesting. Interesting lane sustain. Keep her in there a little bit longer.
Well, here,
while she's last hitting with Twin Fang, she's gaining some life back.
I'll give you some AP damage for Twin Fangs, for example, with 100 AP, which is roughly a Doran's and initial Rod of Ages, and the 10% from passive. The new Twin Fangs does 227.6 per Fang, while the old one was doing 255. So you're actually doing less with Twin Fangs by just having a Rod of Ages and a Doran's. It doesn't start to become more until you have a Doran's, a stacked Rod, and a Death Cap. At that point, you're doing 423 instead of 381 per hit.
I feel like she really needed that spell vamp. I'm not sure how significant it's going to be, but one of her major weaknesses is that she is pretty short range, and she had to be kind of on top of people to really do damage. So that should hopefully help her stay in lane a little bit longer so that she can get those stacks, since that's primarily what she'll be focusing on now.
Right, getting those as fast as possible. Getting out of her weak phase in the beginning.
we touched on it the rework preview show, so to speak, but all of this really just screams top laner to me because she can go up there, be more or less left alone, and do her thing. And like we keep saying that, but it's just like a lot of the complaints I hear and everything are from people. As far as I can tell, are from people who are playing her mid lane, and that's great. That's where she's been played all along, and so that's the you'd have no reason to take her anywhere else. But mid lane, you're expected to be leaving your lane and going elsewhere on the map and everything. And top is has much less of that and everything. You might be expected to teleport here and there, but otherwise, you really do have the opportunity to just sit there and farm your passive up. And particularly against a bruiser, she's going to have a lot of opportunity to get stacks on it just because they have to get into melee range where she can blast them with Q.
Again, like Rise.
Not to mention,
she'd fit top.
Not to forget to mention that she has a lot of zone control too. So if she does happen to get sort of like snowballing or ahead or something like that, she does have that ability to zone people out of areas just due to like abilities she can cast in certain zones or keep people away from minions on a certain side, or even if somebody wants to divert a turret, slow them down if they're on their way to dive or something like that. That just screams top lane.
Well,
she's gonna wave clear like a
yes,
monster.
You really,
oh yeah.
The problem here is you have to equate her to like a Gnar, because it's the really good Gnar players know how to use his passive properly and when the teleport, because you need to teleport just before you're jumping into Mega Gnar. Like, you're not transforming and teleporting, you're transforming before you're one hit from Mega Gnar to really use Gnar effectively in a teleport strategy. The same thing's going to be for Cassiopeia. When you get in late game, it's going to be nearly impossible to walk into a fight with any kind of stacks. Like, you might have 20 stacks or something, if that, because you've killed some lane minions or you've smacked down some jungle minions, but you're not going to walk in with this massive amount of stacks like you could in top lane. So if you're using her and you're going to use her in the mid game effectively, unlike a Rise who can just rune prison and kill, she has to jump down with all her stacks, and then hopefully the person is facing her to get that stun off. Like, she's not as reliable as he is, but I definitely do agree that the top lane gives her the biggest advantage to get those stacks, together and be able to teleport into a fight and use them effectively.
I think teleporting on her is going to be huge too. For anyone who doesn't know what her ult does, if an enemy is facing her, it stuns them, and if they're walking away, then it's a massive slow. So to be able to teleport, even laning, if you teleport in a bot lane and use it, or teleport later into a dragon fight, that's a major game changer, or at least in terms of the fight.
Yeah,
I mean, go ahead.
It's the scream is petrifying too. You hear that scream, you're like, oh my god. You drop your mouse real quick.
The other thing about being in top lane is it actually does make her builds a bit more malleable, because you don't have to be the primary source of burst damage there. You can be a little bit more durable and go for something like a Rylai's or just a tanky AP build, and because she's so much sustained damage, having that going for a tankier build.
On her. Sorry,
I'm just throwing those out there because it's health and a lot of ability.
Well, I'm kind of
power.
looking at it as, yes, Rod of Ages. I think Rod of Ages is going to be core on her, because like you said, you got to build tanky, you have to build big out of top lane, and that's gonna be a great item. You could potentially build her into a Seraph's Embrace, with that increased mana pool for more wave clear, more uptime on your passive, because you're going to be casting more spells. But like
you're going to want that over Athene's though?
Well, no, not necessarily. I'm saying, like, if you want to make her tanky, like, if you are going to be the person they're jumping on, you have that option of doing that. But when you mentioned Rylai's, like, I don't see Rylai's on her because she already has a built-in slow in her kit. With
but more and more slow is never bad.
What do you guys
I
think
can argue
about?
It is, because it's kind of like saying more damage is never bad, but we don't want people building lightning on Vladimir,
What do you guys think about a support Cassiopeia who constantly harasses with spell thieves to keep the poison up, getting stacks,
and will eventually
and then
scale
she
to
can,
do
when
some
she's
damage?
6, she can be a good counter initiate or counter engage. She's got a slow.
It would entirely depend on. I don't know offhand what her mana pool looks like. It depends entirely on that. Since she's not going to be last hitting with Twin Fangs, she's not going to get the bonus mana back for killing things. So everything that she does is just going to drain her mana pretty quickly. And that's really going to dictate the ability of Cassiopeia to survive to thrive as a support.
That also limits her build again, because she's not going to have the gold to build like she normally would in top or mid lane. So you'd probably have to build her pretty much just mana and tank, and then use her for just utility. And I'm not sure that her chase potential later on is really
Worth it.
worth it. Yeah, I don't think it's going to do what you need it to do, especially in a hyper carry meta where your job is really to keep them alive. I'm not sure that. I mean, she could be played there, but I just don't think that she's ideal for that position.
And if you're playing her kind of for her utility at that point, why aren't you playing Lulu or
Right.
something?
Right.
Her mana doesn't look too bad for, Miasma starts at 40. Noxious Blast starts at 40. So you can
Yeah,
kind of keep your
it's her
poison
mana
stacking.
pool though that I don't know about.
Well, yeah, she starts with 250 plus 50. So she starts with 250 plus 50 per level. So, yeah.
That's not a lot of harass in terms of
That's not.
what
You'd
you
have
can
to
get
build
off
some
in
of the
lane.
Runes and masteries. But I don't know. Vel'Koz wasn't seen as a support until he was played as a support.
He's still not a support.
Yeah,
Still not.
He-
a-
I like him
He's
as
not
support.
a
He
support.
can be,
Zyra is
but
the better
he's-
example when you're going for that.
Right.
Yeah. Zyra wasn't even foreseen there, but now she primarily resides there.
You're the only Vel'Koz support player.
I win ranked games as Vel'Koz support.
It's fine.
My
I'm
team
not
doesn't
saying
want
it
Tilt
can't
and
work.
Chancellor.
I'm saying you're the only Vel'Koz support player.
How much
No,
CS
I've
do you
seen
steal from the
who
ADC?
did it in the
those games?
LCS. Spring
And then
promotion.
never
SK.
did it again.
SK.
Get it.
Well,
If. That's it.
but there's something there, so you never know.
Vel'Koz doesn't have mana issues either. Like I've played him support, and you can just spam all day.
Yeah, 40 cost. That's what it is.
The only thing that Cass brings in that lane is a W, and if you're not getting the first slow, and if you're not getting AP, you're blowing
And
out mana
harass.
for Twin Fangs. Well, I mean, maybe levels 1 to 3, probably,
If you can Q harass, then you can build stacks, and all of a sudden you're
until I get smacked by
building
Leona
stacks.
or Karma or
I feel
anybody.
like
Oh yeah. If they engage on you, you go, oh shit. I'm not six.
gotta kill somebody at level 2 if you're gonna win with a cast support.
Even
'Cause
then,
otherwise,
let's just assume worst case scenario you're going against Leona because they counterpick Leona into you. Leona hits 6, and then what? All right, we've been winning the lane for 6 levels, and now we're so squishy we die in 2.
well, I mean that's a typical duo any lane ebb and flow type scenario. That doesn't bother me any. But like if you don't get an early kill with Cass, you are going to really, really struggle for the rest of the game. Whereas a lot of support champions don't struggle nearly as hard if they don't get, that early extra gold bump.
And see, I feel like she really needs Flash to do anything at that point as well. Because if
Yeah,
you don't
she's
have
like-
Flash to ult,
Flash Tibbers, Flash Petrifying Gaze.
yeah.
But Annie had a lot of range. Cass doesn't. So she's countered by
Yeah.
high range, high poke lanes. She's going to be countered by all in lanes. Like there's pretty much no lane that could go against her, or lane that she could go against successfully.
Yeah.
I just realized everything we're saying is just convincing DeClaw to do this. Like that's
Right.
what's happening. He's going to go and do this now.
Well, at least Vel'Koz, you can knock him up in the air real quick, or you can throw a quick, nice slow at him.
Yeah.
Point blank, good range.
And
but
at least you're always doing
Cassiopeia,
true
they jump
damage.
on you. You hit W and run and hope that they're slowed enough. I don't know. I don't think that would work. But you know what? I'm gonna try it.
Oh, God.
I'll let you know.
Adam wants to play ranked with you, and you play it.
Nope.
Yes, he
Don't
does.
want to play the game.
And he's gonna be my marksman.
You know what's so funny? So we look at the rest of these patch notes, and there's like the biggest one out of the rest of this patch note, I think, is the change to how walls interact with
Yeah, dude.
champions.
to created structures.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah, that's
I'm curious to see how people start using that now.
I don't see J4 in here though.
yeah.
It's there. It's there.
Is it?
They showed it in the example in the
It always
patch
says
preview video.
they don't. It's not. It's because they didn't list the champions whose terrain they changed. They list the champions with knockbacks. But
Oh,
if you look at Poppy, it says Anivia's Crystallized, blah blah blah, Jarvan's
I see
Cataclysm.
it there now. Vayne's E, being able to push into that is huge. How many times you fight mid lane?
This is.
How many times have you knocked people out of that shit as Vayne? Like,
Right.
I don't want to call this a huge buff to Vayne, but this is a meaningful buff to her.
It's a meaningful buff to players who play Vayne with wall comps.
yes.
I want to see really good players use this, like a Trundle throw a pillar, Vayne condemn into it immediately. See
That
some
could be
pros
really fun.
working together. Yeah, That'd be pretty awesome. Where they think they're fine, and then it's like almost an instant stun because they're not.
Next
being
thing you
broken.
know, you're going to be seeing Trundle
in.
support and Anivia support just for the wall, so Vayne can crush people into it.
I mean, the thing is, like, Jarvan is a popular champion. He's got a 14.3 something % pick rate. That's a really popular champion compared to Anivia, who's around 1%.
And Azir,
Right.
his ultimate. We'll see how that works.
We don't know. We don't know about Azir.
It does. say
Trundle.
Azir.
Trundle's back to 2%. Yeah, he was that really popular guy for a while. Nobody's playing him anymore.
You know who's very excited about the buff here? Is Sean can finally play the Bloodman.
For Vladimir the Blood Man.
We've been
finally
screaming
fixed
about
it.
it for 17 patches.
People
We're on
have
16.
bitched, and I have bitched for 6 months for them to finally fix his E, so it applied the actual increase in healing from having multiple stacks of his E, Tides of Blood. So, yeah, they fixed it. So I'm thinking Vlad might be really good again.
Yeah, blood is red, so he's ready.
I had a smile on my face and it went away.
Zillion, and the other change in this little minor patch that I really like is also that Zillion now subtly his
Oh yes,
chrono
that's
shift.
big.
You can see when you've been chrono shifted.
So you know.
Don't
yeah.
me. Do you know how many times in an arrow I've like chrono shifted somebody? They're like, I'm running away.
Actually, I wasn't even gonna talk about Zillion because I hate that champion. I was hoping we would just ignore that. What I didn't know is that Shen got energy from taunting dead champions.
Yeah, I didn't know that either.
That's funny.
How much were people abusing that? Of course, you'd have to find.
They don't know. They even said in the notes, "We're not 100%
We have no
sure
idea.
what the impact of changing this will be." As
is
it's
a big
hard to know how
nerf.
much random energy he was getting. And
That's
it's
funny.
not like we're seeing a lot of Shen these days, so
I'm really upset that there's not more to this patch. I understand why, but I really like talking about patch notes and that like you spend 20 minutes, you're like, well, patch done.
yeah, that's it for the meaningful changes
Nope.
in the game.
Wait, I want to talk more about the Bloodman. Sean, how is this Tides of Blood that much better?
So now when you use your E, which, takes a little bit of health to use, and can stack up to 4 times and is supposed to give you an increase in spell vamp for each stack that it has, you should basically just get a lot more health back every time that you use any of your abilities once you have multiple stacks rolling. So it's going to be easier. It's been bugged for a really long time.
Really?
And I guess Riot mentioned that they were kind of afraid to fix it in a sense because he might be out of control because Vlad's one of
Fix
those
his
champs.
numbers. What?
Yeah, they fixed.
Yeah, it's
That is the most paper thin argument I've ever heard for not fixing a champion. Like you give a champion an ability, but you don't want to give it.
They
to
give
him.
a champion an
doesn't do what
ability.
you say it's gonna do.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, depending on how big of an increase this actually is and how much this opens up somebody's ability to bully, particularly after 6 when you start to get really scary anyway on Vlad, it might start that like Vlad ramping up time way earlier in the game because you're not forced to back as much, or you can afford to be more aggressive because you're getting more health back on certain trades, or when you're trading early, that's the difference between you living or dying because they don't have an ignite. That all could play
or
a huge
getting
factor.
bullied out in lane, but you still you don't want to stack your E because you're not going to get your life back. But now
Right.
you are when you're last thing under tower, so you can actually, go against somebody.
Well,
who's
now
bullying you.
now we're using your Tides of Blood because it's working the way it's intended. So
Right, 'cause it does so much damage to you.
before, in a way, you were punished because you're using an ability that costs health to use, and though the health cost wasn't that significant, you weren't getting any
More than the
benefit
others.
for expending
Or-
that health, other than a little bit of extra
How low
damage.
the cooldown was, it ended up being significant because you were using it all the time.
Right.
Now,
And
will
the
you be a lot
damage isn't that
tankier
high.
if you stack it up to max and then boom, go all in on somebody, hit your little pool, hit your heal? Will it matter, or are you still going to play him the same? You're just going to use it when you can, and
You're gonna
All
play them
in
the
when
same,
you
but
can.
you're gonna have more health as a result.
Yeah, you're gonna want to
Right.
play like this. The thing is, this
you don't
bug
maximize the
for
stacks as
people
much.
who have played Vlad for a really long time because Vlad wasn't functioning the way he was supposed to be functioning, or at least the way people are used to function. Him functioning. I used to play him all the time, especially a lot around Last Worlds, which I don't want to talk about because the best game ever that Adam forcibly made me lose.
Okay.
What about when you were Ultimate Bravery AD Vladimir?
That was the worst thing I've ever done, and I hope to God that no one else ever has to suffer as AD Vladimir ever again, because you're useless, and you'll never be good.
You're bad, and you should feel bad.
Okay.
I want to see him more. I think he's a cool champ, so
I'll play him tonight. Let's go.
let's do it.
Well, so
You're
I
not
mean,
allowed to.
we could kind of touch on that. I mean, so Vlad changes. He'd been a reasonably popular top laner until they broke him. Rise has been popular for a long time. We suspect Cassiopeia is going to succeed more as a top laner than a mid laner. Are we kind of starting to cross into an era where we're going to see double AP comps again, like we did in season 1?
Only because they nerfed the hell out of all the bruisers that were up there.
Yeah.
I can see that.
It's one of those power shifts with just how the game has been.
With the tanky support
changed.
and a tanky jungle, you can afford to get away with that.
And then, they're changing Victor, and to me, his entire kit again just screams somebody who wants to farm and do his thing and be left alone, and that's top lane. I mean, I gotta wonder if that's the direction that we're heading in right now. I think, it might be a case where we are closing in on that, and then the Season 5 mastery changes fuck everything up, so who even knows anymore?
Right.
But, you gotta, I mean, I don't know. To me, it seems like there is a pending shift coming.
Well, a lot of the champions that would be really strong counters for some of these AP champs are people with mobility, and they're kind of out of favor right now, and a lot of them have been nerfed, so there's not really a lot to go against them right now.
Yeah, if you look at people, like Mundo is kind of there. He's not prevalent. Shyvana has been nerfed into the ground because of item changes and changes to her kit. So we no longer see that. Jax doesn't really... I mean, Jax can sit up there. Like, he could still be played at this point. I think people could pick him up and start playing him more often. But we're really seeing Lulu rise. Probably
Yeah, I mean, and
Cass
Lulu
going
falls
in
into
future.
that same
Rumble.
category.
Right.
Rumble
They tried
could
to fix
totally
Lulu out of
start
that
coming
category,
back in
too.
here with all those fixes.
Would Kennen come back? I mean, I thought you still get
I'd
the
like to
same
see Kennen come
limitations of
back. No.
Kennen just because he doesn't scale quite as hard, but...
I think Kennen won't because they nerfed his range too hard and he can't bully out the APs that can bully him harder.
Right.
Like-
that would be his one advantage if he still had the range.
Yeah.
Would
you
we
throw your
see
shuriken and
someone...
that's it.
Will we see champs like Swain or Malzahar up there?
Oh, I will put Malzahar up there.
I still don't think
We're not
we'll
talking about DeClaude. We're
I
talking
don't
about
think
the
we will
rest of
see
the player
Malzahar.
base.
We might see
Swain-
Malzahar one off, but I don't think we will because of his ultimate still
not really
rooting
talking
people
ab-
in place.
I'm not really
I
talking
understand
about
where you're
competitive
going.
play.
It doesn't matter. Okay, here's the thing. When I look at this,
I've seen Swain a couple times.
Swain can play. Swain has been played in competitive play, but if you look at it from like a solo
Top.
queue standpoint, we've said it over time and time again. You could play anything. Like somebody could play Malzahar
yeah.
top lane and make it work. Like it's really hard to talk about what should be played in the top lane and how it should be played without having a conversation of what does your team need. If your team needs a Malzahar in the top lane, then play it in the top lane.
You know what?
There's a
This is a good transition to that article, Tom.
It is, but I want to back up. So there's a difference between anything can be played anywhere and saying that, and trying making our prediction for picking up on trends and seeing do we think this is going to fit? Do we think this is going to happen, and what champions are going to fit if that shift happens? There's a difference between being able to play anything anywhere and what champions are being played where.
Well,
Yeah.
one of Swain's big weaknesses is his mobility, and if he's not going to have to deal with that, he can out sustain a lot of these other champions up there.
True. He's actually a good one for top, and I've seen it. I've seen it work well. But Azir, are they predicting him? I know they want him mid, but
Support.
I can see him top. Support as well. Yeah.
He's not out, otherwise I'd be like, yeah,
I'm
I'll
on that
pick tonight
support
or
train
Days
with
to do
Azir.
it.
Woo woo! Chugga, 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 chugga,
Well, since
chugga,
you're talking
chugga,
about
chugga.
trends and where Riot might be going with this, or where the game might be headed, he's where they're headed right now. So, curious to see where they expect him to land.
You need to look. I guess we need to look. What are the popular champions at top lane now? Ryze, Lulu,
Nasus.
Nasus, Maokai. Okay.
Alistar.
No, not Alistar anymore. It's Maokai, Lulu, Rise really in the top lane, and then maybe a few others here and there that are mixed in. And okay, what does Malzahar bring? push to the tower the entire time, and then he could potentially roam. But can he roam well? That's a question you have to ask. Swain's a big bully. Swain can trade blow for blow and get farm up there, and that's fine. Sometimes that's all that matters. So when we're talking about these champions, what can these champions bring when it comes to like a teleport, or when it comes to a roam, or what kind of strategy can they work into that will work for a solo queue team?
Yeah.
Does my pseudo question make sense?
Yep, it does. And champions like Malzahar, you kind of want to get Ignite because you can use it while you're ulting, and it synergizes well with his kit. But you want Teleport when you're on a top laner, so there's a give and take there. It's like, okay, I got to get Teleport. Now I'm not going to be... Maybe I can't 100% to zero somebody because I don't have that Ignite. But and once you do that, don't do that as Malzahar. You're kind of stuck watching your building attack. Bless you.
Let's see.
Unless you go AD. Maybe?
Do you say 80 Malzahar?
Yeah.
But then does he work well in team fights?
I just know he's great jungling as AD and in Dominion. I have never tried it.
I guess it could work.
Lane.
I mean, I
Okay.
guess potentially it's split push Malzahar, and he can 1v1 anybody.
Yeah, and you can
there's
drop out
that, and
two
then-
Voidlings who kick your ass.
I mean, the reason I think he works okay in top lane is, he can split push, then he shows up, and like even if he doesn't have as much AP as you would otherwise get, because you're building for durability or whatever, like the fact is he still deals a lot of percentage health damage in an area, no less.
Right.
And that's
And you kind of have
power.
to send two to deal with him, because if you send one and he's got his ult up, he'll
Yeah, you
knock
send
you
one
down.
and he's gonna
Yeah.
win.
Food for thought. But this segues into a neat article. Who found this one? Dom? Adam?
Dom did.
I found it. It was on Reddit.
It's actually pretty neat analysis.
Yeah, it's so basically the people, I got to pull up the actual article location. The people over at LOL Builder basically did a study. They looked at 15 million ranked solo queue games. So basically 30 million teams.
Right.
And looked at the team constructions and everything. They assigned characteristics to every single champion in the game: tank, marksman, fighter, mage, etc. And then they started using that data to determine what roles were most important and in what quantity. And so tanks, like the teams with 2 tanks win 52% of the time, or win more than 52% of the time. Teams with 3 tanks win 52% of the time. I mean, that doesn't sound like much, but if you have a 50-50 chance going into it and you increase your odds by 2%, that's actually very, very meaningful in theory.
Yeah, and they explain the 3 tanks, like a tanky support like Braum or Leona, a tanky jungler, and then a tanky top.
And it might be a case where the tanky top ends up focusing more on ability power, but
Like a Maokai, yep.
they couldn't go that heavily into things without ending up with really just totally meaningless or incomprehensible results. Marksman didn't surprise anybody because teams with 1 or 2 ended up winning 50% of the time. And the same applied to mages. Teams with 1 or 2 mages ended up winning actually over 50% of the time. Teams that didn't have mages or 8 mages or marksmen, or teams that had 3 marksmen or 3 mages. I need to be clear on that. It wasn't like they weren't interchangeable. They actually performed worse, which does make a lot of sense, because it seems to be common perception that if you have a lot of damage but nobody that can take damage, you're probably not going to win a game. The most surprising thing to me was that teams without fighters or bruisers, depending on what you want to call them, how you want to look at them, were actually more successful than teams with them. Like teams with 0 bruisers won more games than teams with 1 bruiser.
See, when looking at this and talking to Dom, at first I said it's kind of a little bullshit, but then everything was clarified as I was speaking with Dom, but about what a bruiser was, what a tank was, and I think the characteristic of a tank is somebody who's bringing CC to a team fight or can soak damage initially. And like my example, if you bring a Malphite, if you bring a Malphite and a Mumu to a solo queue team, it really doesn't matter if you make it to, if you go down 12 kills in 20 minutes. you have the potential to turn a team fight around instantly because of double CC.
And the other thing they brought
Especially
up
at
about that
hypercarry.
was each characters like that, tanks in particular, who do have those like mega CC abilities, you can see exactly when it's happening, so the rest of the team knows when to go in. So in a solo queue setting, it's sort of like instead of having to communicate anything, you communicate by using an ability that it affects more than one enemy person. You're like, oh, that Malphite just ulted, I better just go balls to the walls and kill everybody on the other team, because this is the best time to do it.
It turns everyone's switch on. Okay, let me go in now. No matter how droning they are.
I think some of it also has to do with the build path. Like a lot of people who play fighters will build like 2 damage items first, and then you lose a lot of mid-game fights because there's no one to soak up your damage. Then they don't start building their defensive items until it's almost too late, and then they can't get the gold they need to finish them because they're not getting the farm. The carries are getting the farm, and I think that it plays into the first pot, which was the needing tanks in order to be successful.
Yeah,
I mean, and that's
the enemy's getting more powerful too. So you're falling.
That's one of the things that they really hammered down on this, or in this. It's that like bruisers can build like tanks and sort of serve that function, but when the bubble pops, tanks are going to do that job better.
Right. Yeah. And you know what? The other stat, the stat with the fighters, where having 0 was better, is the same. They found the same results with assassins.
That didn't really surprise me. Most assassin champions are really high skill cap, so when you sample this many games, like skill disparity is going to really start to play a thing, which is the other reason why tanks end up being so successful. It's because you are not punished to nearly the same degree by being out of position or even by missing abilities and that type of thing when you're a tank as you would be on an assassin or a marksman.
I like how pretty much the moral of this article is build a well-rounded team.
Right.
Mm-hmm. I mean, they were just trying to prove that point. Like, does your team really need to be well-rounded or not? Like, and that's common perception, but then you always like try to do something weird and you get that person in solo queue who's like, GG, no tank. And then GG first blood 20 times in a game.
At the same time, this is also, I kind of want to say, a slap in the face and a wake-up call to really selfish players who want to play nothing but assassins top or out of the jungle or whatever if their team already has an assassin, because it, like, just looking at the numbers, if you're going to play selfish and put the game in your own hands by picking one of those characters, I mean, the stats are showing that you're going to be losing more games because you're not fulfilling, you're not bringing a character that would be the most beneficial to your team in any given scenario.
Yeah, how many times have we walked into games and seen Rengar, Master Yi, Kha'Zix, for example, and then you're like, well, I have to pick Leona or I have to pick Thresh to fill that void or I have to play Blitzcrank, and it doesn't work out for your team because somebody loses a lane. Like, with 3 assassins, you'll have to win.
Or like an assassin will lose to a tank and then the tank's unkillable and your assassin's useless.
And the problem there is that a support as your primary damage soak is kind of just putting a bandage on something that needs a tourniquet. I mean, it's just not actually addressing the problem. It's just making a best effort at it.
That's why I hate when supports engage. Like, I realize sometimes we tell you, like with Annie, it's really good to engage, but you usually have a follow-up to help that engage out. So the team fight, you don't have to peel. If your only form of engage is a support, who peels for the AD carry who now being dove by at least one person? Nobody peels. And the AD carry is useless.
My favorite thing about this is that tanks and support, and unfortunately they said they couldn't quantify the support, but tanks also are very, very unrewarding roles at times, and they're very, very unappreciated because you don't feel like you're doing the damage and you don't feel like you're, necessarily being the star of the show. No one at the end of the game goes, yes, Malphite, whatever. Everyone gets excited about the big plays.
Look at all the damage I took, guys. Look at all of the damage that I took.
Exactly. It's not rewarding to play unless you really, really appreciate the role. And this kind of gives a big thank you and like some acknowledgement. And like, when you play a tank, you are really useful and you do make a huge difference, even though you don't feel like it always.
You bring up a good point.
When I land a 5-man stun on Sejuani, I feel really good.
Well, you bring up a good point because that's a lot like a lot of other games. If you've been playing MMOs your entire life and you play a tank, you are integral to downing that boss, because they couldn't just have him run around, blowing up people who taking damage. So you have to have that meat shield there. But nobody ever says, "Good job standing that boss in place and not moving him."
Well, and it's not even that too. It's like if you accidentally in that kind of setting, if you lead somebody the wrong way or you do something even slightly wrong, it kills 10 to 25 other people, and you're in a situation where it's like, oh, it's the tank's fault or something like that. And it's like, look, guys, I'm just here trying to make sure that all of you don't die. Like,
that's why I never wanted to play a tank. Like, wow. No, it was like a really high stress job and everything.
The mantle of responsibility.
I was the main tank for my guild for the 5 years that I played, or 6 years, or whatever that I played, and I loved it. I just like tanking. I like being the meat shield, so I play a lot of tanky champs and LOL as well. But it's fun.
Played a hunter.
I don't know. I like in the article.
Shoot some bows, shoot some guns, and just like drink a beer.
DPS. I like how in this article they're saying, okay, we've all had that douchebag Yasuo who's like, he first picks it, locks in, and then everybody else picks whatever they want to play, and there's no tank. Says GG no tank, and goes on tilt, blah blah blah. They're trying to disprove him, and then they end up going, well, you know what? That D-bag was kind of right. You kind of should have some tanks.
It makes me wonder if the ideal team comp for solo queue, not for professional play, and I suppose there's no way we could actually quantify this because we'd be doing ranked play, but still, it makes me wonder if the ideal comp is 2 tanks and whether that's top and support or top and jungle or whatever, 2 tanks, 2 mages, and a marksman.
Yeah.
I mean, we have no way of knowing, and even if we tried it personally, it would just be
based on the numbers. That should be okay.
Yeah, no, that should. I mean, that's at least one of the ideal type of comps.
Right.
I think this also says if you get shoved in a role that you don't know, especially if it's like jungle or top lane, then you can't make an error by going tank. All you have to do is farm, get what you can, really build.
Yeah.
So if you don't know what you're doing and you're not comfortable with it, I'm not very comfortable top lane, but all you have to do, is just try not to die early and build tank, and you're still going to be useful to your team, and you're still going to make a difference come team fights.
I really like that. Good. And here, to add to this, just out of nowhere, I was just thinking about it. If you're playing an assassin in a jungle role or something like that, when you don't have a tank or something or anything like that, you're kind of stuck to be offensive no matter what. Even if you guys are down in a game, you're going to be you're playing a character who's mostly offensive because you can't take any damage on the defensive. Either you need to kill somebody to get an advantage, like a numbers advantage on the enemy team or whatever. A tank sort of character or champ can play either role. So, hey, you can engage and be on the offensive. Or if they engage on you, you still have somebody that can end up eating a lot of damage, CCing or whatever, and you can play that defensive role as well. You're not pigeonholed into doing one thing. And it just opens up way more possibilities for your team to survive and react to how the enemy is playing or based on how the game is going in general.
As long as you don't go in alone.
Right.
Right.
And then just get blown up, and you're like, oh, Cassiopeia, I made them use 2 ultimates. Okay, but now it's a 5v4. I think we pretty much hit that article.
I mean, I guess I really just got to say credit to the guys or the staff at LOL Builder. It's a really interesting, really in-depth, compelling article. I mean, 30 million team comps is not a small sample, and
no,
they were all on
sample.
They were all on 4.15. This wasn't like 3 months, this wasn't 3 months of data or anything like that. It was all on
that alone caught my attention because I was like, oh, okay, what are they? And no, we did 15 million games. Like, holy shit! Okay, let me read this.
Well, I mean, it still would have been statistically significant if they had only done like 1,000 to 1,200 games, but because they did that many games, that is pretty strong statistical data.
That's really irrefutable.
I mean, and
games.
It makes the 2% matter.
The only problem. Sorry, Dab, go.
I was gonna say, just I want to caution players to take away from this that you are not guaranteeing your team a victory by picking a second tank or by picking a second mage if you already have one, that type of thing. Like, all you are doing is giving yourself a statistically better chance of winning. It's still in your hands. I mean, it's still in your hands.
If you're
to,
whiffing your ults, you're not doing anything.
Yeah, there's still a lot of skill and everything involved, like just general gameplay involved. But a lot of people do misread into stats like this. It's like, oh well, if this is the ideal, then I should pick this because I'm always going to win. It's like, well, that's not how games work.
But like Adam was saying or way earlier, you should pick to complement your team. Pretty much it. If your first pick, let's say your first pick, and you want to play your assassin, you should communicate first and say, hey, I'm going jungle. Who wants top and can top tank, during the banning phase, blah, blah, blah. Maybe drag out the banning phase, wait a while before you ban until your team communicates. And if they don't, then I'd pick the tank to be safe because the numbers say that that's your better chance. So
most of us are not skilled enough, like the pro players. We can walk in a game and play whatever we want and go right to challenger. Right. You have to, if you want to climb this game and you really want to get better at it, part of that is spending the extra time to talk to the people in your chat and figure out what they want to do. I'm sure there's some kind of statistic out there that says if the people who talk in pregame lobby win 1% more games. That's total. That's not fact. I'm just saying. I'm sure there's some kind of statistic out there that could back that up. But in my experience, people who've said, "Listen, I want to play Yasuo. Okay, well, I can play support Braum. Why don't you pick up, Lulu top? Okay, that sounds great." And now people go in there with a better attitude. We preach this 100 episodes, literally. Yeah. Attitude, talking, communication.
I just hate when someone says, "No, that's fine. I'll tank." So then I'll pick Pantheon, for example, and then they'll pick Aurelia. Aurelia's tanky.
Can I talk real quick? Best Lol Fails in chat just said, well, isn't the problem that the sample is highly influenced by the bottom of the skill level? And while that's true, you also have to keep in mind that the vast majority of players in League are in silver and bronze, where those skill levels are lower. Mm-hmm. So if they just sampled challenger and diamond, then it wouldn't be accurate in general. So while it does sample,
it samples all players.
Yeah. Right, exactly. It represents the LoL community and the player skill levels within it.
Right. If you look at Platinum right now, even Plat 5 or whatever plat you're sitting, you're in the top 1 or 2% of the game, or top 5% of the game. That's a huge. I mean, that's a big accomplishment. That's a small number of players. But you have to look, how many times does a Mumu get banned in bronze? People write in, I'm bronze 3, and Mumu gets banned all the time. Why? Because he's a tank and he displaces.
And he has a shock value mechanic
that makes you
R
to win button.
Yeah. So that's to go off a Dave's point, where you don't necessarily need the skill. As long as you smack somebody with a bandage toss and press R, you have turned the tides of a team fight.
Which is why the numbers are like that. Now, if they did an analysis like that in the higher ranks, would the skill of a good fighter or assassin sway the numbers a little bit? Instead of going down from 0, would it stay level or maybe bump up at 1 and then go back down? Who knows? I think that's a good point, Best Lol Fails, that brings up in the Twitch chat. So it is something to look at. But when you're looking at the base level, it kind of takes that skill out of it. So you're purely looking at the champion selections themselves.
I do want to bring up that I like that he brought that up, mostly because if you actually look at the way people are split between bronze, silver, gold, platinum, diamond, and challenger, with there being 4 divisions from gold to challenger, it seems like there should be a ton of people in that in those segments, because there's more of those segments than there are bronze and silver. But 90% of the player base is silver or below. Mm-hmm. So for the everyman,
just sit and think about that for a second. We could say it for a day, but if you don't just sit there and think that 90% of 1 million players are in silver, I mean, obviously that's a gross underestimation of how many people are playing this game.
Because of the goddamn Smurfs, I'm telling you.
Gold 5 is like the top 12%.
It's also a case where you shouldn't feel bad if you are in that category. There's nothing wrong to work to separate yourself from the pack, but you shouldn't feel bad because most players are in one of those.
It isn't even most players. Everybody is there except for a very small portion of people. Everyone is there. That's just how it is. There are very few people above that.
Yeah, so if you're in Plat or Diamond and you play a Killer Zed and you win, and that's great. But in terms of most of the listeners of the show and most players in general, these statistics are going to should be really valuable and are very representative of the games that you are playing.
In fact, they're more meaningful for you than they would be for somebody in the higher divisions, because just knowing
Right.
that should give you an edge to be able to at least work your way to a position in another division where you can start playing an assassin at a high level because you have an understanding of the game up until that point.
Then again, you get to the high level player and you're solo queue still. Solo queue. You get people who are just, I'm going to play Zed. I'm going to play Yasuo. I'm going to play Assassin. I don't care what you pick. You're going to get trounced by a well-rounded team comp.
And
who
not
knows
only
what they're
that, you're
doing.
still going to run into people. Like, I played a ranked game today in, gold 2, high gold, where this guy insta-locks Jace and gives up 3 kills in the first 6 minutes and leaves the game.
Oh,
So
God.
that just, you never really escape.
Solo queue woes.
And that
solo
is-
queue is a
Right,
monster.
that's really important. Yeah,
But that's also why the 15 million games sampled is significant, because it
Right.
removes
Weed those out.
15.
No, it removes the impact of those outlier games where somebody feeds 3 kills, disconnects, and then a team loses. Or you have somebody who builds AP Ash. You remove really the significance of those types of games, because in the grand scheme, like, it's one out of 15 million.
A ton of games.
right.
Yeah.
And about the whole, like, people still raging in, like, gold and plat and diamond, I started out in bronze, and I was there for a long time, and I got plat this season. And the biggest difference to me, I feel like, is the decision making and the mechanics. But just because you change those 2 things about people, you don't change personality. So if you're really upset because everyone's raging or leaving, like, it's not like everybody in plat. I mean, Adam's in plat and he screams at everybody.
I knew it was coming. I knew it. Yes.
So
Shots
just because you think, like, oh, elo hell and this and that, and people disconnect, now instead in plat, once you hit plat, it's, oh my god, are we in bronze? Why did you do that? You should be better than this. You got carried. Like, there's still just as many people raging. There's still just as many people
Listen, you
quitting.
bronze scrub.
Yeah.
You shut the fuck up and quit talking
Right,
bad about me.
I have one of my good friends is real life friends with Yazuki, and one of the biggest tips Yazuki ever gave to him was get out of your mind the entire idea of elo hell, because no matter what elo you're in, you're always in hell and there's no escaping it. You just have to keep playing.
I mean, watch challenger player streams and watch everybody. They're like, oh my god, this player. How Dyrus has been in games where Dr. Mundo built Frozen Heart.
Yeah.
Dyrus.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just you're always going to run into those type of players. So that's 100% accurate advice. Like, you are always, is basically what it comes down to. So just
You're always
forget
surrounded by
forget about the
assholes.
concept.
We're all assholes sometimes.
Some people more than
Speak for
others.
yourself.
Adam.
Well, I think that was a fantastic conversation and a great way to start to slowly bring out this
Yeah, nice
podcast.
article there, Dom.
Yeah, I mean, again, credits to the people
fun.
over at LOL Builder. That's
That was
exceptional
one of
analysis.
the better analytical pieces I've seen in a really long time.
That's one of the best ones I've
Yeah.
ever read. I've read a lot.
I
of these
really
articles.
enjoyed that.
Me too.
It's finally one that goes in and breaks down data and uses it
I
in
hope
a
they do that
meaningful
with
way.
every patch. Every meaningful patch. I hope
Last
they
time,
continue to do it,
their last
so.
article was during patch 4.14, and it was, does crowd control increase win rate? Spoiler, yeah, it does.
Yes, but duh.
Well, this
There's
also
there's
plays
actually-
into the
there's
analysis
actually
they
a
just
point-
did as well. So
There's actually a point where you have too much CC. The ideal number of hard CC is 4.
Let's play Freljord comp tonight.
I will happily play Freljord comp.
God.
I'm down.
Yeah, so the ideal number is 4. After that, it actually is less impactful for the team, but 4 is a lot of goddamn crowd
Okay.
control.
Well, I'm going to start to wrap up this podcast, as now we are reaching the 60-minute mark. We're going to be a little bit light tonight. Light, I
Newcomer
mean
splash?
4 minutes. As I click into the microphone, you're all welcome. Anything else that we have to talk about this? I don't really see anything else in the patch notes that need to be discussed.
No, I mean, we're going to have to talk about Azir next week. But
If he comes out, like, I won't be able to play him. I'm gonna let you guys know and everybody in the podcast land that from Friday to Sunday night, Potophobia is not on the internet. So I hope everything is taken care of with the GGC Chronicle World previews and everything. So that
Nice
is
passive-aggressive management style there.
Seriously, you might as well just yell at him right now because
you got it, buddies. Everybody listen to this podcast got it. 2 thumbs up to everybody out there. Thank you for playing League of Legends. Thank you for supporting the Trinity Force podcast. We do appreciate your help.
There's one more thing I want to comment before you close. Sorry. The patch notes mentioned that Flash is now smoother for movement after Flash. Like, I've done it many times, partially because of my MS, where I'll flash and then I'll stop. And I'm like, that little
now when you
hesitation
flash, if you were
trust
still
me.
moving, you should continue to
You'll
move.
flash
which
and
is
continue
big.
moving fluidly.
Thank you.
So that's actually
that's
pretty
amazing.
big for me.
That's a quality of life buff for everybody.
It is. So enjoy it.
I feel like I'm not going to notice that.
Oh, I
you're bad.
am
I'm
because
gonna
I do it all the time.
I'll
like,
notice it.
all right, I'm
yeah.
out of here. Flash.
Hey, I'm right here.
God damn it. They caught up. So,
It seems like I use my flash aggressively more often than I use it defensively. And if you're using it aggressively, you're probably like flashing and then running
unless
away
you're
from what you just.
trying to
Offensive
close
flashes
distance
are the
for one
best
last
flashes.
spear shot, and you do it, and then you kind of stop there, and then, oh crap, and you're not in range. So this is gonna be nice.
All right, guys, that was episode 193 of the Trinity Force podcast. Thank you for listening. Don't forget, if you want to have the head producer of the Trinity Force LCS rundown, write us feedback at Trinity
Right,
Force
we'll
podcast.
hire you, Adam said, if you get that. So
Oh God, that I wouldn't make promises you can't keep. buddy.
Yeah, you know what? I didn't mention this earlier, but one of the big things about being the producer is you actually have a lot of control over how that show, not what the content the show talks about, but how they speak, what they're doing with their microphones, how they're positioned. Lance first helped us out on the Trinity Force podcast to make it sound better. I've yelled at Dom for 50 episodes to move his microphone around, and then he
Hey,
finally
he did
did
it
because he got a new
last week.
place. Yeah!
for example, putting cups down. He was saying that.
Yeah, we got yelled at for doing this.
Yep, which is good. He's
Just
doing
like
his job.
2 days ago, too.
We have a
Enjoy
little
that
note in
one,
our document.
Lancifer.
Yep. Shout out.
Anyway,
This one's for you, buddy.
there we go. All right, guys. Thanks for listening to episode 193 of the Trinity Force podcast. We appreciate all your support. Please continue to support us. If you like this episode, link us to your friends. Put us on Reddit. Put us on Twitter. Put us everywhere. We will see you all next week. Peace.
Bye,
Love
guys.
you. Bye.
Bye.